If you've been listening to the show for the past 6 months, you've been hearing me talk about a personal project I'm doing that I was going to launch on Kickstarter called the Drifting Moon Tarot. It's a tarot deck, and it is live on Kickstarter right now. It is currently up, and I just wanted to make that announcement. A tarot deck is a deck of cards that each card has a different theme, and my job as an illustrator was to figure out the stories and the symbols and the meanings behind these cards and the different themes. And so it was a really fun, almost like a narrative kind of project, but applying it to a deck of cards. And so I'd love for you guys to go check those out on Kickstarter. We do have a link in the show notes here on this episode. And you could also go to Kickstarter and just look up Drifting Moon Tarot. As you know, us here at 3 Point Perspective, we are very big on artists making projects that they are passionate about. And the only way these projects work is if you guys support them. We love the idea of taking a little bit of power away from the big companies and giving it back to the artists. And that's what these things are. That's what this project is for me. I took the last 6 months off of commercial work just to do this project. And so I would love to ask for your support and your help. And if you like the project, share it around. I would really, really appreciate it. Okay. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And Will Terry couldn't join us today. He is on assignment, but today we are interviewing Kazu Kibuishi, creator of the Amulet series, creator of Flight, editor of Flight,
creator of
Copper,
Daisy Cutter, and Harry
Bold
Potter.
City Productions, Harry Potter covers, right? Like
this
so
dude
much.
has done a lot.
Yeah, and this was one of those. We go way back. Our paths cross like 20 years ago. All of us. I never met you though, but I met Kazu, and Kazu knew you,
right?
And he knew me. But it was just kind of cool to catch up with them. I mean, we see each other every once in a while, he and I, but you haven't seen him in forever, right?
Yeah, it's been a long time, about 10 years.
Yeah. So there's history there, but then this guy is, if you've never seen an interview with him or if you haven't read his work, this guy really understands the creative process and not just the process, but the whole thinking behind it and the lifestyle around it. And one of the things that I love that he gets into is you got to do, or you do what you do, right? Like if you're doing something and you post it online or you paid for it, then that's going to be something that a calling card for you. And if you don't want to do those kinds of things, then don't do them. But if you do want to do them,
yeah,
do them. It's so simple.
Obvious, but he's right. You know, we get a lot of questions about, oh, should I take this job? Should I not take this job? And you know, he knows who he is, and he takes the things that points him in the right direction. Mm-hmm. And the other sense I get from him, which is, you know, don't get it from everybody. I mean, we have a lot of successful people on here, but he's just a smart guy. He's a guy. Yeah. When we start interviewing, I think to myself, yeah, he's way smarter than me. I just
even with half a brain, right?
Yeah, he had a medical thing happen, which we're going to talk about in the interview. But yeah, even his half brain is more than I got.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
He's a smart guy.
So don't beat yourself up too bad.
I don't. I got a quarter brain. I do the best I can with it.
Yeah. Same here. All right, let's get right down into it. Kazu, so good to see you. You are in San Antonio now. Tell us, catch us up. What have you been up to since the pandemic started?
Yeah, since the pandemic started, I had to shift gears like everybody else. I was friends with a lot of people in emergency management up in Washington State, where I lived prior to here. And so I did a PSA for the National Guard. I was just trying to do my best to help people deal with everything that was going on. Mostly trying to calm anxieties and calm nerves, because I thought that was probably going to be the biggest problem, more than the virus itself. I was more concerned about how people would react to the virus and everything that was happening. So I tried to do my best to keep things calm. I've been volunteering a lot of time in classrooms. I've actually stopped accepting honorariums for the past 2-3 years. And I've been donating my time back in exchange for them purchasing books. Actually, I asked them just purchase books for your students and give them to the students, and that will be the honorarium. And so I've been doing that. I've been doing that for the last couple of years. And that's gone over pretty well. So I don't know, and just doing little worksheets and things for teachers and parents who are having a hard time homeschooling. You know, Amy and I are kind of used to doing kind of hybrid learning. You know, for years we've been doing a little bit of that anyway. So for us, it wasn't a huge shift, but I could tell for a lot of parents it was a real challenge. So I just tried to get my stuff out there. I've been working on the last Amulet book, but at the same time, I wasn't going to push it out because I did notice that in the publishing world, there was a bit of a traffic jam. There was a log jam of books and just logistics. It seemed to be a big issue during this time. So I was not in a hurry to push more books out. I actually just slowed it down a bit, spent a lot more time on helping where I can. And trying to make this last book worth the wait.
Cool. So tell us, like, this last book, number 9 of Amulet, it's going to wrap up the whole series, right?
Yeah, I hope so.
You hope so. But you're leaving the door open. There could be a 10 if you don't quite do it.
There won't be a 10.
Okay.
But I have not ruled out a sequel series. And I actually... Wow. I already have it in mind, so it's already there.
So is this?
But there's so much stuff I have to do before I get to that.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm curious. You've been doing Amulet now for 15 years, something like that. When was the first book? 2005.
Close to it. Yeah, 2006 is when I think signed a contract to do it, or 05, 06 is when I signed my contract. The first book came out in 08. It came out the same month as Iron Man. So it started, Amulet is exactly as old as the Marvel universe. Okay. As the MCU.
The cinematic universe.
Yes, the MCU, whatever it is. Yeah, I've been doing it ever since. I didn't think it was going to be this long,
right?
But it turned into this thing. It's a monster.
I'm curious, like, that first book you did compared to book 9. What have you learned about making graphic novels?
Oh my goodness! How?
I mean,
where do you want to start?
We'll just sit back. You just talk for the next hour.
What's the biggest takeaway? The big takeaway. Is it workflow? Is it storytelling? Man. I mean, I'm sure there's all kinds of nuggets.
There are a lot, and the first thing that always comes to mind is pace. Is learning the pace of not just your work, but how your work is consumed and processed. And, one thing I learned from working on the Flight anthology concurrent with Amulet at the early stages of Amulet, I was doing 2 Flight anthologies and 1 Amulet book a year. And I did that for like 5 years. Right. And it was a bit much. And one thing I learned from that was that my pace was too fast. And that pace, ended up like physically hurting me, but also it did not allow the audience time to get on board. And so, like with Flight, especially, we were so far ahead of the game, in my opinion. We were like, as Scott McCloud was saying, we were the future. And it did turn out to be fairly prescient, I think, if you consider the lineup of talent that was in there. They did become the industry as we know it today, but we were getting too eager, and we pushed so fast that the audience just didn't understand what they were getting. It was just like only the people who made the content understood what we were doing. And so it became an insider book. Like it became it was like, Jake Lee, you remember when we were web guys, it was that crew, it was that group of people and that bubble that we had. We knew what was hot and what was going to be great, but the world still hadn't processed it. And so the thing that I learned the most is learning to relate what we do in our bubble, in our sphere, to the world at large. And how do they process what we do, and how do they use it in their day-to-day lives?
Because you kind of think like, oh shoot, and I think social media feeds into this, but it's like, I haven't made anything or put out anything in the last 3 months. People are just like, what are they gonna think? I'm forgotten. When 3 months goes by like that in the eyes of a consumer, in the mind of consumer, and really it's like, can they handle, like you're saying, anything more than what, a year apart? If it's a good, nice installment, how far should they be spaced out, right?
Yeah, I mean, Amulet 1 sells better today than it did when it started. A lot better,
wow.
Now. And it's only so my book has never been a zeitgeist book, I think, like one of those ones that just became the popular book. I never really wanted to be that guy anyway, but it wasn't, the books just didn't hit in the way that a lot of others did. In fact, Amulet 1 did pretty poorly for years. It took a while for it to catch on. And so, well, there's that, but I've been thinking a lot about how, the earliest readers that I've had are now having kids themselves now.
Right. Yeah.
Time continues to move on. Life happens, outside of what we do and our interests, and we might be engaged with something for a short while, but there's still somebody 5 years down the road that's about to be even more engaged in what we're doing than we were, or that our fans today are. And I feel like I learned from watching the comics industry, the mainstream comics industry, as we call it. I felt like one of the reasons why I wasn't interested in being a part of it early on was that, I felt that our peers working in that industry were catering too much to the people who were there in that moment. And they were trying so hard to hold on. They were so scared to lose audience members that they didn't allow new ones to come in. They were shutting out the kids, in favor of the older customers.
Right.
When really a successful business and a healthy one would know that there's a cycle of life. Life moves on, and you have to generate content for the next generation, and have them want to hand the keys over to somebody else, instead of hold on to those things. And that's the thing that the reason why I didn't get into comics early on, when I actually got I got asked to work on some image books when I was 16. And I was like I was gonna be like Joe Mad, I was like, I want to be the next Joe Mad. And I looked at what they were creating, and I thought, this is gonna be over soon. Because if I handed this over to my mom and my grandma, they'll be like, what are you doing?
What?
And I'd be like, I don't know. It's like muscles and guns, grandma. That's what everybody wants, apparently.
Well, the other thing too, that's the stark difference between say a Marvel book and maybe like something at Image, or maybe what's happening in manga, is like, if a kid goes and sees Spider-Man and they're like, oh, I want to read the comics, like where's the Spider-Man graphic novel, where do I start? And it's like, well, which version of Spider-Man do you want? Do you want to read the 1960s? Like, do we have access to that? And it's like, as opposed to something, say, like, Invincible, even though that's not the same age range, I would say it's way more mature. But if you want to read Invincible, you go get issue number 1, and you read until the end of it, and that's the Invincible story. And same with manga. If you want to read Bakuman, it's not like all over the place. You don't have to piece it together. You just go get the first book, and
Yeah,
right.
And I think that's all due to whether or not the book is corporately controlled or creator controlled. You know, and you just mentioned Robert Kirkman's work, which is creator controlled. You know, and that's one thing that's great about Image, and why I liked working with them when we did, is that they did honor that the works and the projects are in the creator's hands. Now, that also means that you have to sell the book too.
Right.
Well, that's what I was going to ask about. For the early Amulet, you said that it didn't really have a lot of traction early on, but you've done so many of them. So was the publisher on board, even though sales weren't skyrocketing right out of the gate, and they knew 100%. The story was strong?
100%.
Awesome.
Scholastic is it was actually David Saylor in particular.
Yeah.
Who reminded me at the very start, knowing that I wasn't making money on Amulet. If I didn't have movie deals coming in for Amulet, if I wasn't working for like Disney, Google, and different places for my contract work, I really couldn't keep the lights on. You know, honestly, just because I was having to spend all the money to make the books, because I was hiring people to just try to get these things done super quick. So I was losing money. Just straight up losing money for years, for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 years, you know, just investing in Amulet. I don't think I made money until Amulet 5, if you want to know the truth.
Wow.
That's how long it took. But I found a way, you know, and David Saylor was always, you know, he had my back. And he'd always tell me, like, you know, when Joe started, and he would be talking about J.K. Rowling, said, when Joe started, you know, we went to this one signing where nobody showed up. That was my first signing, and I was there with David. And he said, this was the same. It was the same with Joe. And he said that it's just going to take time, Kazu, and it's going to take time for people to understand what you're doing and see it. And to hear that from the person that's publishing it meant the world to me. That meant like, I can trust this group, and I could trust David, and David trusted me. And so even when the books weren't selling incredibly well, in his mind, he'll tell you, if he was on here right now, he would say, oh, Kazu's full of it. The books were doing really well all along. But I think, you know, for me, I just had to make sure, like, I could pay bills, you know, and that wasn't happening at the time. So like, maybe the books did well, you know, compared to a random book, like it was selling books. So it wasn't like a failure. But for me, like, seeing negative money was a very difficult thing to do for, you know, a good half a decade. You know? And so, yeah, it was like the forest from the trees viewpoint that David Saylor had. His vision has a lot to do with why we have graphic novels where it is right now. And, you know, he and Judy had the vision, and I came in alongside them and teamed up with them. And I think that all of us had this vision to see this very successful graphic novel industry. And in fact, it would have been so easy to see it if you just went to Japan and then came back, and then just go there, look at it, and then come back here and go, why are you guys not doing that? You know, so it was very easy to stay on board.
Yeah.
I don't want to segue too much. Let me just ask this question, because I'm just
just segue to anything. Just
was David Saylor, was that your entry point to doing the Harry Potter series? And tell me a little bit about that, because it seems just so out of left field. And then I started seeing your work, and I was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. But how did that happen? And
that is funny, right? Because like, Lee, I always thought of you as the cover guy. You did the illustrated covers. Right. I don't do those. You know that. I don't take those on. You know, and honestly, I just didn't take on any contract gigs at all at the time. I was just not taking on anything, because I have a philosophy. You know, it's you do what you do. So even, you know, no matter what, like if you decide to like start running down any track, it's going to be part of your tracks. It's going to be part of who you are. And if I started doing illustrated covers, then that was going to be part of my line of work, you know, and I had to, and so I was saying no to almost everything. So David Saylor was the one who came to me to ask me about the Harry Potter covers. And this is after they had already tried bringing in multiple artists and designers in New York City to come in and assemble a potential 15th anniversary edition set of books. And I presumed that they were not happy with what was coming in, and they just nobody could agree on anything. So David, on just why not situation, he said he saw my Flight Volume 3 poster on his wall. And he said, why aren't we asking Kazu? So he sent me an email and said, would you like to give it a shot? And I said, sure, fully expecting not to get it. So I just, and I just thought about all of the freelance projects. This is probably good for your podcast listeners. Actually, I thought a lot about my old freelance gigs. I've worked for so many. Like, I had this huge list of clients that nobody knows about. But that like back in the day when I used to do client work, I thought about those days again, and I thought, like, okay, well, what does a client want? Well, the client really wants to be involved. So what I did was I only spent 5 minutes per cover. On my initial run. So I would do 5-minute covers only, and just keep it at that. Whatever I can get in 5 minutes, that's what I was going to send them. And I sent them a set of, all of them. Like I did a set, and it was all rough. And then they looked at it and said, well, we like this one in that set. Can you do all of them like this one? And that was Prisoner of Azkaban. And it was it's pretty much exactly as my 5-minute sketch was. It was like the easiest one for me to do, because I knew that scene. I just knew that had to be the scene. It had to, it's the scene on the lake, it's like the most important scene, I think, in all of Harry Potter, without giving spoilers as to why. But so I did that, and I did all of them kind of around that design. And then I went into a coma. When I had bacterial meningitis, and that
freaked me out, by the way.
Wait, I don't know about this part.
Yeah, I think it was expired steroids or something. I think I broke my hand playing basketball, and I had gotten it treated, and like I had to reset and stuff. And I think I started getting sick all of a sudden around that time, and just the worst headache in the world. And and I was starting to just like bounce off of wall, like just walk into walls. I was just not in control of my body and mind. And, sent me to I went to the ER once, and they said, he's just got an ear infection or something, sent me home. And then later on that night, I was in an ambulance going to another hospital. And then they said, we've seen this before. Somebody just died like a couple of days ago with the same thing. And they said, we don't need to check. We just need to just treat it. And so they put me in a coma, and then, I was on a spinal tap, and I woke up about a week later, about 50 or 60 pounds, like lighter.
Did you know what was happening at this point, or were you just kind of totally out of it? I
was pretty out of it. I do remember little bits. I remember coming back to life. Like I felt like I died. That whole experience was a real life-changing thing. Because it did feel like I had a choice. Like I felt like everything slipping away, and it was very peaceful. I've told this to a few people too. Like I just felt like, this is it. It's over. And like it was like the whole world started doing the, you've seen Interstellar. Like that whole accordion world thing.
Right.
That was actually happening in my brain. I don't know, whoever did the research for that, I think they did a pretty good job about what inner space is like, because that's what it felt like. The hospital walls were moving, everything was moving. And I just felt like I was going away. And I remember thinking in the middle of it, because Amy was pregnant with Sophie at the time, and I'd never met Sophie. And I was like, I never met my daughter, man. I gotta come back. And I remember like, okay, wake up, man, wake up.
Wow. So it's a conscious choice. Like it
was a conscious choice. And it was like, that was the hardest part, was actually waking up. Like it was painful. Like my brain, like the whole, I felt like I was being born. I imagine that's what it's like to be born. When you're a baby, it's probably like just the worst trip. Like just showing up like, what is this? What is happening? And that's kind of what happened to me. I remember waking up. It was on the 4th of July because the fireworks were going off in the window. And that's when I knew I was back. I was like, oh, there's lights coming through I think that's fireworks. I think I'm back. and then I couldn't walk for a while. I had to learn how to walk again. I didn't recognize Amy or my family or friends, but she wasn't worried because she knew that the doctors had told her that this was going to happen. I didn't recognize our house
so you came back and you're just like blank
in a wheelchair.
slate. So you're a blank slate basically when you wake up. You're just sort of like that classic amnesia.
Sort
patient,
of like
right?
I had a sense of who I was, but I didn't remember what had happened in my life.
And I think for a while there afterwards too, there was still like you had a hard time remembering things.
I still have a hard time remembering
like
things.
Short term. Because I remember we were in Seattle at Emerald City, and it's like you forgot where you parked, and I was like, well, let's start looking at all the garages and figure it out, and we eventually found it, and it was like no big deal.
Oh man, like when I put my keys down somewhere, I get so worried. When I put something down and I go, I shouldn't do this. I should not. Yeah, I got to take a picture. I take a picture of my car whenever I park it now. Not like when I go to the grocery store, but if I'm dropping it off at the airport or something like that. Before my memory used to be so razor sharp that it used to intimidate people because I would remember all our conversations and stuff like that. So people would get nervous. So Amy says that now that I'm not like that and I forget everything, that I'm nicer.
Yeah, you're cooler to be around. You're not.
Everyone just like, Kazu's chill now. He's
over there in the corner.
He's like an old man. So I don't know.
Have you leveraged? There's there's so many questions I have now. Sorry, Jake. I'm just gonna have to.
Well,
we can go whatever
along
you
that
want
track
to go,
though. You going back to the Harry Potter covers. I don't want to lose that thread.
Oh yeah.
Right.
So I did the sketches and stuff, and then I was in a coma. And when I came out of it, I got an email, from David, and when I was this like first day back in the office, I was looking through all my emails, and I saw this an email come in and said, "Hey, congrats! We decided we want you to do the covers, the Harry Potter covers," and I was like,
"Wait,
what?
I can draw?
What Harry Potter?"
I was like, "What?" I turned to
Who's
Jason.
Harry Potter?
I turned to Jason. I was like, what is this they're telling me about these Harry Potter covers, man? Like I apparently am doing the Harry Potter covers. And I remember he had this, like, he just looked like he saw a ghost. Like
he's like, oh shoot.
He's just like, I'm working for a vegetable. And at the same time, now I was doing the covers, and that was, really the best thing to have happened at that time. And I almost feel like it was like a gift from David Saylor, like he's been like he's my Dumbledore, he's been there. He and Judy Hansen are like really the reason I'm standing here still doing all this. And they've just been the most amazing professors and guides, like you could possibly imagine having. And so in a way, like, well, what happened was with the Harry Potter covers, they became like cognitive therapy for me. So I couldn't write at the time. Like my brain just couldn't, like, if I wrote down a sentence, it would just be forgotten in 5 minutes. So, I knew that was temporary, but it meant that I couldn't write my book. So I had to put Amulet 6 on hold while that was going on. And in fact, people will, they bag on me online and stuff for taking extra long on my books, but there's actually a physical reason.
Right.
You guys, like, I have half the brain I used to. So you're going to get half the speed. I mean, it's still the same quality. It's just a little slower, Yeah. I'm just older in my mind. So, but I mean, still getting it done. But yeah, doing the Harry Potter covers allowed me to just read the books, and I did remember Harry Potter, so I would read through passages again, and then based on those memories, I would, form these illustrations, and drawing is fun for me. It's like, that's a gift, to be able to do that. That's not really where the work is at. I mean, it's physical work, but I think a lot of the mental work of being an author is really figuring out what stories, the world kind of wants or needs from you. And that's stressful. That's a very difficult process. That's a whole nother conversation, but illustration's always just been a joy, so just to be able to do fan art of Harry Potter, that's essentially what I got to do, but it wasn't like even fan art because it was so official.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is that once you do something like that series, I mean, it's such an iconic.
Yeah.
There's all of publishing, and then there's Harry Potter, and this, in my opinion, and then so was your career. You talked about once you pick a path, then everybody's going to want you for the things that you do, right? And so you do these covers, and it's not only any covers, but it's the Harry Potter covers. And so now, does that change your reputation in publishing? Does it change the jobs you're getting offered? Does it change what you want to do at all?
No, not at all. So I just turned down everything after that. I was getting asked to do things like Lord of the Rings and stuff like that. I was like, no. I was like, I was being asked to do everything under the sun. And my, Judy knows what my focus is. My focus is I'm not here for doing illustration gig work. I actually didn't care how much they paid me, honestly, for Harry Potter. It was a decent amount, but it's not, I'm into creating my stories and creating my worlds, and those things, they maintain equity. They exist, beyond, they continue to live beyond the work that I do. If I just do the illustrations, that's just jobs,
Right.
You know what I mean? So I maybe not for you, maybe you have some good deals going on, but I didn't ask for royalties from Harry Potter. I just didn't feel like I have a philosophy, and that is you do what you do. And once you start becoming somebody who does that for a living, then you are making that conscious choice, and you're going to run that path. It's like another choice I'm going to have to make very soon is movies. How much do I want to be involved in that, and how much do I want to go back to doing that, because that's what I used to do. And I've been having to think about it a lot lately, as we potentially start working on Amulet movies, which I can't talk to you guys about too much.
Okay. It's interesting.
We'll try to get a scoop.
The way that you answer that's interesting, because we've been doing these interviews for a little while now, and it's the one common thread sort of that I've seen through. We're interviewing obviously successful people, and the one common thread is that they know who they are and who they're not. And that's kind of what you're saying there is like, I can do all this stuff, but that's not who I am. And then it benefits you in the long run, even though I know our listeners are probably like, oh my God, I want to illustrate Lord of the Rings and all this stuff. If you deviate from that kind of truth, your own personal path, then, it might be short-term gain, but we're in this for the long term, right? I mean, it's a marathon sort of.
Well, the hardest decision I ever had to make was walking away from directing the Bone movie. And that was something that I talked to Jeff Smith and Vijaya Iyer about early on. They approached me about doing it, and I was honored because it was a project I had on my radar. I wanted to be that director. I wanted to direct like live action versions of Bone, and not like an animated version of Bone, but I also wanted to do like a live action version of Nausicaa. That was always like a dream. That was like kind of a dream of mine. But those were like my dream projects in college, and to have it in front of me, working with cartoon books, to develop this along with James Baxter. And our friend Hamid, who ended up being a producer on Game of Thrones, he was going to produce, and Baxter was going to animate, and I was going to direct. And we were looking at it, and I started writing the treatment and stuff. And I had a long talk with Amy about it. And I said, the reason I'm making Amulet is because I felt there needed to be more books like Bone. I revere Bone, but at the same time, I felt like it was more important to have more Bone books than Bone movies, even though, like a Bone movie is going to be awesome. It's going to get people interested in the books. And I can't wait to see it when they finally make it. But I just felt like we needed more graphic novels. This was the time in our history where it was important. This door was opening. Jeff opened that door. Like he opened, he put a foot right there. and it's a very small crack that we had to create this new mainstream for comics. And and Bone was really the one that like opened that door. And then it was Raina who was probably the first to walk through that door, with the Babysitters Club and Smile. And I was right there alongside Raina, like kind of like right after her. I just knew that something had to be there. And so that's what I actually had to. So I had to quit working on Daisy Cutter. That was the series I was working on at the time, and I had to stop working on a Bone movie. And I had to make a conscious effort to work on a project that wasn't making me any money. And that was Amulet. But I've done that before a few times in my life. I just knew that it would work out if you had a vision for it, and you could see, you can see how it would be more successful than all the other things. But, and if it's not a little risky, it's probably not it's not gonna be very successful. There has to be a story to it. There has to be this feeling like you're on the ropes or something. It's like a sport. Like a good game isn't a good, it's not a good game if you're blowing out the competition. It's always about like, like it's like a highly competitive thing, and you just get over the edge, and claim victory. And I think that's the same with all these projects. They always have to kind of feel like you're on that edge.
A little bit nervous. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's like the difference between Lord of the Rings and The Hobbit. Like, like Lord of the Rings, those people were making those movies as if they didn't, they'll die.
Right.
You know what I mean? You can feel it. And they love it too. They're like in it. They're like, we're going to do this thing and it's going to be amazing. And if we don't do this, we're going to die. Right. And then when you watch The Hobbit, you're like, we did this before. Here we do it again. Let's just do it again. And they're like, I'm tired. Why are we doing this again? Crazy. And then so then that vibe isn't the same, And so, I think like when you're doing projects and things, you've got to have that drive. There's got to be a little bit of fire to it, and when you write and stuff. And that's part of like why we even moved here. It's just like right in the middle of production at the end of, Amulet. And here I am just like packing it up, and moving to a whole nother state. But a lot of it's just driven by our kids, like, where we want our kids to be. And every day that they lose of their childhood is just huge. So, we wanted them to be, in a place where we felt would best serve them. So, but yeah, as far as, just like any of these projects, it's you kind of just have to stick with a vision, and if it seems risky to everybody, but not to you, you're in a really good spot.
Right. You mentioned earlier, Jason. Can you tell me about that collaboration? Like you two have been working together, him as your assistant for how long?
Yeah, I sort of adopted Jason from Ray Goto at Savannah College of Art and Design. The professors there really like Jason a lot. And I think they asked me to kind of give him a hand and help him out. And he seemed like a really talented kid. And he was, obviously, he had a lot of potential. He had tremendous skill. But it just wasn't coming together for him until he started working for me, I suppose. And he was our second actually full-time employee. Anthony Wu, who has done like some fantastic work for the Voltron series and everything now. He was our first full-time assistant. Jason came on board and just kind of wrote it out for a long time. I expected him to leave a long time ago, honestly. And now like we're at the end of the series, and I've told him like, I gave him a huge severance package and a huge bonus and everything. And I just said like, you don't have to worry about the end of this book. I'm actually coloring the last third of Amulet. Because I just want it to be me. I know how to color. It's part of the expression of it, and he did a fantastic job of like getting the first 150 pages or so of this book, and it looks really great. But I just knew there wasn't much left for him to do, so I wanted him to work on his own series. So right now he's a free agent, and he's going to be hopefully doing his book. But you got to light a fire underneath some butts. And looks like that's hopefully that was the right one for him. and he'll hopefully be a fantastic author that you'll have on the podcast at some point, but
absolutely.
But he's super talented, as Jason, he just he did a fantastic job. He just needs the confidence in himself. And I think just me hovering over him as his boss was not going to help that. So I think it's time for him the field is so open right now, and the opportunities have never been better for somebody with his talent and skill to do a book. I was looking at that and I just thought this is the time to push him out of the nest, and he's got to ride those waves.
It reminds me of that saying, like the sapling can't grow in the shade of the the big oak tree, right? Like, it has to go out from under that shade. I talked to him last week actually on the phone.
Oh, hey, nice.
Yeah, because he was like, "Hey, I'm kind of on my own now. I need some advice," and I was like, "Absolutely, like you're gonna kill it." He's such a talent, and he's got vision and everything.
Exactly.
It's just people are going to get a lot out of what you just said, that the field is really open right now. We talk about that a lot, me, Jake, and Will, that at least for me, I've never seen it. So, they're accepting of different genres, different styles, crossing styles and crossing genres. And there's so many ways to get work out there now, as opposed to when we were all getting started. You kind of had to go a little bit traditional. I think it was kind of modifying it the early 2000s, but now there's so many places to go. And then, talking about what you were just saying, that there's no guarantee. And I think people want to know for sure, like a lot of students when they're starting out or young professionals, that they know 100%. And what you're saying is there's a ton of opportunity and it's not going to feel guaranteed.
If it feels guaranteed, you're probably doing it wrong.
Right.
No, seriously, because it's usually that's when I feel like the ground's going to fall out from under me. If everything's working out like exactly as you could plan it.
Right.
I don't know. There's my spidey sense usually tells me you got to be careful. Something's off.
You're doing something that's been seen before. Chances are.
Well, it's just better to be like kind of always on your toes and be prepared to like adapt and to change your way of thinking and stuff. Like it's like I think sometimes about like filmmakers like Wong Kar-wai when he was doing Ashes of Time. And during that time, I think he was having a terrible time making this big epic action thing with like, it was like one of those big wushu epics, and, I think he just needed a break and he ended up just shooting Chungking Express in the market when like on his break time. And then that became the film that made all the money and like all the acclaim. And, it was the little movie, but the big movie was like kind of considered laborious and kind of boring and not so great. I think that that says something about the creative process, that you kind of want to be like a fluttering bird and not like this tank trying to protect, like this turtled in tank that's protecting an idea, like that's not going to inspire people.
Right.
So I think you have to live that way too. And, that's part of like everyone was like, what, you're moving Texas, like right at the end of your book, what just finish your stuff? I'm like, well, time is of the essence, guys. Just, you got to just go do the thing. And in Amulet, like it's also about finding a home and stuff and deciding where to be. So if we're in a state of like not knowing like where we're going to, like we're in the transition period of some kind, then it's going to affect the writing of the book. So one of the reasons why we decided to wrap up early and move here earlier than we thought we were going to move was actually for the writing process of Amulet. It was to protect the book. Otherwise, like I would just write a worse book if I waited. So yeah, it's not convenient. Life is just not convenient, and you're going to have to learn to live with it. And the people who are best at dealing with the fire when it's in front of you, and you can like turn it into magic, are the people who are going to do the best in life in general. So
there's no like perfect setup, no perfect situation to make the thing that that you want to make, right?
You don't want it.
Right.
Like whenever I had a perfect setup, I just felt like it was a trap.
It's a great way.
I wanted to ask you too. So Amulet, sort of, you said it was timed right with Iron Man. It's sort of the MCU, like that also is, I would say, like the time where we see the spark and then the entire forest fire of social media taking over the world, right? And I noticed these years that you've been like conspicuously absent on social media. I just want to know, like, and until recently, I kind of see you on Twitter and I kind of see you on Instagram from time to time. But what went into that thought? Like, why avoid it?
Well, I use social media, but you pay for everything that you do, and if something isn't charging you money, then they're making money off of you somehow. So I'm just not into, helping corporations make money just because, I'm bored or I'm nervous or something, or I need somebody's feedback. No, I don't know. I'm on social media for the network of teachers and librarians that are on there. And I run my social media. I'm not absent. I actually post, like, these days I've been absent, maybe the last several weeks, but I'm usually posting every week a few times. And it's always something classroom related. It's like if I was coming into a PTA meeting or teachers conference room and, I got my donuts and I have my copies of Amulet, or like some news that might be related to what they'd be excited about, I'll bring it into that forum. And that's the way I've treated it. And that's like my the following list is like that too. They're just mostly teachers and things like that. I don't really, I don't read it for the anxiety. right. I don't feel like I need that in my life. So I don't know. I think it's just important to separate the two. I got into a little too much, I think, years ago. And, I was just like fighting people online sometimes. And I was like, what is this? What is going on? Like, I don't think these people would ever pick a fight with me in real life, but they just have the social media courage to do it through anonymity. Like, but in real life, they'd probably not even, say a word, so it's not real. That world is not real. Like all those fires that you see on there, they're not real, but you can find what's going on with people when they have problems. You can probably find out about that by reading social media, because there are a lot of times people who are in trouble will broadcast it. So I sort of see it as a thermometer for mental health. And but I don't really look at it as a propagating my stuff type of tool. Right. You could use it, it has helped for book signings. I'll say that. Like there have been signings where it was clear no one was going to show up. And I just went on social media, said, I'm going to be here in like 30 minutes. You guys want to come by? And every single time I did that, at least like 2 or 3 families would show up because of it.
Yeah.
What's the situation with the book signings and stuff right now? Do you have any on tap, or is that over right now? No,
it's always been going on. Yeah, I'm doing school visits like constantly.
Like actual in-person stuff right now with
I would. COVID? Yeah, I'm starting to set up stuff right now. But we haven't. No, it's been virtual mostly. But I've been doing book signings. Even with COVID and stuff, I've been into stores. Especially at my friend Dan Olam's brick and mortar bookstore, brick and mortar books in Redmond. That was like my home base in Washington State. But it's like the best bookstore ever. You guys should visit that and sign there if you can. Awesome. The Olams are a fantastic family. But yeah, I just keep the books alive. One of the things that I didn't want to do too was like put too much energy in creating more content at the moment, because I've got the movie stuff that will probably happen at some point. And also I did want to see how perennial my books are before I moved on to my next series. Like, how long do I need to babysit my books? Until people just forget them. Are they going to forget them? They don't forget Dr. Seuss. They don't forget, they don't forget Harry Potter. They don't forget J.K. Rowling. You know what I mean? Those are perennial. and I wanted to know, is Amulet perennial? That was a big question in my mind. So I wasn't trying, because like if I just kept elevating it and everybody just kept advertising it and making it this big to do about it. I mean, you could do that for anything and it will sell, so like, am I a result of the hype, or am I really here to stay? Was a really big question I had before I moved on to the next thing I do, which I will be marketing a lot more than I do Amulet, So a lot of it, I've been standing back and like just listening to people yell at me for being lazy or like not doing enough or whatever, and I'm just kind of like slowly forming this book that I think they're going to think is amazing. But at the same time, just listening to people call me George R.R. Martin, who I actually really appreciate for doing what he does, but I will say this to people too. Since his last book, I've done 5. So like, or something like 3 or 4 or 5. I'm like, come on, guys.
I can't believe anybody would label you as being lazy. I mean, that's the
oh man, I get it all the time.
Thing to me. If you look at the whole body of work and how consistent you've been, I just can't imagine lazy being the word.
Disappointing.
I would think prolific would be the word.
No, I've heard a lot of like disappointing and lazy and
these are people that have they written?
I think it's just
huge series and done these graphic novels. Of course
I don't blame. I think they just like the books. They want more. And you can never, when you make something like that people really love, like you can never make it fast enough.
Right.
Yeah.
You're gonna get a misery. You're gonna get a misery.
It's really
member that's gonna come after you.
It's usually parents who are like having a hard time with their own kids. And those kids like love the books and they're like asking me really, they're doing the whole Violet Beauregard thing. Yes. and those parents
I want an Amulet book now.
I want it now, Daddy. I want it now. And then the daddy is like, working at some major corporation. It just does no time for Violet. And it's just like, where's my daughter's book, you lazy bum? And I literally get the sweets, like what I just said, like why are you not making my daughter happy? And I just don't answer them. Sometimes I do. I go, hey, look, there's a new book coming out at this time. And they go, oh, thank you so much. I can't believe you responded.
I want to ask you about copper, going way back.
Yeah.
So why do copper? Why'd you do copper? Like, what did that serve for you?
That was just for me. Yeah. It was like, I drew the first copper after I left the field of architecture. I had like a really nice job in architecture as a graphic designer. 9/11 happened. And I was in the office, and I think it's just the way I talk or something. But people, like, I was the youngest person in the whole office, the whole thing. And I thought I was around a lot of like big grownups, doing architecture and like business things and stuff. But when 9/11 hit, people were scared and they turned into children. Everybody, like from 50s, 60s, 70s on, like all the way down, everybody was a child, like going, what's going on, And it was just an odd couple of weeks where it felt like, I was trying to figure my life out, but I had a whole lot of people looking to me like, what do we do? Like to me, and I'm just like, I'm like the most junior guy here. I don't know. Like, how would I know? I don't know. And but I put on airs. Like I could tell them like, oh, let's calm down. It'll be fine. Blah, blah, blah. We'll do this. And, don't worry. It'll be okay. It'll resolve itself. And I had like a nervous breakdown after all that. Just too much stress. Just didn't sleep for several days. And I ended up just quitting architecture and just was sitting in my parents' house for a number of months, just went home, after like I was supporting my mom and dad at the time with my job and everything. And I just couldn't handle all the stress anymore of like supporting my parents, supporting all these corporate folks, supporting everybody. And I was in a terrible relationship at the time. And then that broke off as well. So that was good. And so I just had to reassess everything and try to find some kind of bearing. I had to find like some kind of foundation again. And I drew a little sticker of a scared boy and a scared dog. Mm-hmm. And I thought, this is what I feel like right now. And I was like, hey, look, I have the sticker thing. And then I had a friend call me or email me and said, hey, I've got a friend who has a Asian American magazine called Yoke. And they're looking for some stuff to put in there. And, I know your comics are good, so they can't pay you, but would you like to put a comic in there? I said, sure. What kind of size do I have? And they said, you got a square this big. And I was like, okay. And that became the first Copper comic, that black and white one. Mm-hmm. And I just drew a drawing of a boy being scared. I was like seeing people's dreams turn into war. Mm-hmm. Right. And that was the concept. And then from there, I did a bunch kind of like that because the Iraq war was starting up around that time. And I was watching it like horrified. Mm-hmm. I was like, what are people doing? What are they doing? Like, could you guys not see that this is a mistake?
Right.
This is a disaster, you guys. And, it's like one mistake after another. And I know that now this just is something that happens in our, our world. Like historically, it's like every 10 years, I'm like waiting, like what's the new big mistake that's going to like create more mistakes, And then, and so Copper was a response to that because I felt like I had no voice. I had no way to combat it. And so I put it online, and then it's just garnered all this attention. And two of the first people that contacted me were Scott McCloud and Jonah Vasquez, of all people. Like those two, like said, like, "Who are you? This is amazing. We love Copper so much." And I started making friends from just that. And I was looking at your site, Jake. Mm-hmm. Agent 44 was like one of the ones I went to. I was like, this guy's great. Like, I like his stuff, and it's positive, and the art's great, and became a huge fan. And I was like, you know what? I'll do a site like I remember it was you and Derek Kirk Kim that made me feel confident because I felt like I was at like a professional level, but then I thought putting it on the web just didn't feel that professional at the time because you just didn't see it. Yeah. Right. And so people would often, like, even professionals would like kind of like talk it down, like, oh, that's not as good because they're giving it away for free, but I saw you doing your site, and then I saw Derek Kirk Kim doing small stories online, and then people like Amy and the Pants Press gang and all these girls like doing amazing web comics. And Lee, you had a site too. I remember yours was up there, and remember Tony DiTerlizzi had a great site, and Justin Sweet, and all those guys. And so I thought, well, that's BS that the web is like second rate, because these are the top artists out there, like Craig Mullins. Come on.
Yeah, we all dove in at sort of the same time. And it was just weird that everybody's like, all right, let's do it.
Yeah, I was like, they're doing it, I'll do it too. So I just put my stuff out there, and then all these people started showing up and asking me like who I was, and then I got to be friends with like people like Jake and just our crew and all that stuff that's happened. Lee, you were at Art Center when we started Flight.
Yeah. I remember we used to play basketball. I was telling Jake about that earlier. That you are like, I remember we were first playing as Kang Lee and Chris. This whole crew really having fun. But we're all art students, so we're terrible at basketball, except for you. And then I remember seeing you make a shot, and I was like, God, that was a really long shot. He got really lucky. And then somebody passed you the ball again, and then he drained another one and another one and another. I was like, oh my God, he's actually really, really good. And me and Kang are running around. Nobody passes us the ball ever. They're spastic, short kids.
Oh man, Kang is the life of the party, though. There's nobody with more confidence than Kang Lee.
Yeah.
He can back it up though.
Yeah, he can draw. Yeah, but he's awesome. I love Kang.
Yeah, that whole crew
is a good crew.
All together at the same time. And then everybody kind of dove in and just went all in for online stuff. And being the one common thread I see from that whole group of bad basketball players, except you, is that we were all very entrepreneurial, very open to like, hey, what is this over here? Well, I'll just give it a go. and see what happens. I'll put this out there. I'll try it, even if there's no money involved, or even if it's a loss leader kind of thing. And it ended up sort of working for everybody in its own way.
Yeah, it was a good group. I mean, and I included Ben Zhu as well, who started Gallery Nucleus, and man, yeah. I mean, and then I guess Dan Santat was like kind of in the periphery as well. Dan was out there doing his thing. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that art center class was really strong. Did some really, they've gone on to do big things.
Yeah, all over the place too. All kinds of different media, all kinds of different storytelling. Yeah, it's cool.
Yeah.
Going back to Copper, I kind of feel like that was your, how long did it go for? You did it for how many years?
I actually did them recently. So it hasn't stopped. I don't know if you know. You can go to my website, and I just quietly put them up.
I'm there right now, and I was like, wait, I didn't see this one.
Yeah, there's a couple of new ones. I'll just put them up every now and then. It's not for money or anything or views or clicks. So if I feel like the world needs a Copper comic, I'll put it out there.
But I feel like early on, though, it was sort of like training ground for you.
Kind of, yeah. Oh, mainly for coloring. Because I didn't know how to color anything. I didn't go to art school. Mm-hmm. And through college, I didn't do anything but black and white work. It was just ink and Prismacolor with black and white Prismacolor stuff. I'd never done color. And so, who taught me to color was Kang. Mm-hmm. I sat down, and I was starting to work on Photoshop, and then Kang just came over and he said, I told him, I don't know how to color anything. Can you show me? He said, oh no. He's like, no, dude, you can color. And I go, what do you mean? I don't color anything. He's like, but you understand values. You understand black and white. It's all good. So just do the same thing, man, but color wheel.
Wow.
And that was your 4 years of art school.
Yeah. I mean, I was just like, okay. Yeah. But all you have to do is that, you understand value, you if you get light and dark, and then you get your, you understand where you are and color on the color wheel. And then I would add temperature is my biggest thing, is like whether, how hot, how cold you want to go. And how, where you want to mix it. And, you have those three things. That's all you need. And from then on, it should be about expression, not about technique, because technique is subjective. So, after that, I was good to go. And I started, the Flight Volume 1 cover was actually the underpainting, that illustration was done by Kang. So I did the drawing, but I didn't know how to use Photoshop with like a tablet or anything yet. So Kang did the underpainting. But then when we did the revised version, the red cover, that was me painting at that point. And so it was really neat to see how much I had learned since the first time. When we went back and redid it, I was like, oh, now I know how to paint and stuff. And then I was doing the Harry Potter stuff,
Right.
I like that you're open enough for asking for help, because I feel like a lot of times people hold on too tightly to their own skill set and they can't ask for help. And I've even had students where I come over and do like a little bit of an underpainting or something like that, just trying to help them out. And they're like, okay, I can't use that because that's yours.
Oh, what? No, man.
It happens so much more than you think it would. But I love that you, and me and Jake and Will do that all the time. We'll shoot each other a JPEG and we'll paint on top of it and send it back. And so I just think it's important that people hear pros don't, there's always your skill set and there's always other skill sets that you can learn, and that you're open enough to ask. And then, have the benefit of having Kang be, one of the greatest artists of all time. Right there.
He's just sitting there with no shirt on in my bedroom, just painting, just, because he's in Vietnam, he's just oh, it's hot in here, man.
Yeah.
painting in the corner and then just making a Michelangelo masterpiece.
I love hearing about stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then I also remember
Chris Applehans was there too. So both Chris and I would just watch Kang. And we both learned from him.
He's awesome. But what's funny about that is that Kang and Chris came down and I went to Costa Rica right after Art Center for a little while, about 6 months. And Chris and Kang came down to Costa Rica and they were doing landscape paintings. And Kang was like, I can't do it. It's just physical, he's such a digital master, but he was struggling so much. And I just was like, oh God, there's something that Kang isn't perfect at.
Right. That and jump shots, right?
So, yeah, that's two things. I'm sure he's amazing at all of it now.
Yeah, he can just do anything he wants, man. That guy, that guy's got quite a mind. But yeah.
Cool. I mean, we could keep talking forever, but like we've been at it for over an hour now. So maybe we meet up with you next year sometime when the book comes out.
Yeah,
well, and the movie stuff. I want to hear. I mean, there's a whole hour and a half, 2 hours in just talking about what it means to take something to a movie.
Yeah, and that really hasn't started yet. So and I can't talk about it too much. So it's that's something that will be an interesting journey. I'm just deciding. I'm not sure how involved I'm going to end up being. I think that's what I'm trying to decide right now. It's also why I've scaled down our production. Because I think I've already made that choice in my mind, how much, how involved I'm going to be. Right. But yeah, that should be interesting.
That'll be fun to hear about. Dude, thanks for showing up, man. It's so fun catching up and seeing you again.
Yeah. It's good to see you guys.
Good.
Yeah. This big crazy move that's been going on. It's nice to just feel like I'm kind of back in the flow of things here.
For sure.
Well, just chatting with you guys.
Yeah. Let us know when you get settled and when Amulet 9 comes out, and we'll have you back on.
Okay. Sounds good.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll see you.
See you later.
All right. Thanks, guys.
All right. Kazu. That was cool.
Yeah,
he's such a cool guy.
Amazing guy. What a story. The coma thing really threw me. And then, and his route to making all this work. So it's fascinating.
Right. And it's a testament to just sitting down and making stuff at your pace and not at the pace you think other people are, should have it. But he's just doing it. And at the end, he's going to have what he wants. And it's not going to be rushed. It's not going to be, forced or anything like that. So I don't know. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, it makes me have the thought, which I don't think I've ever had, is that does the industry go at the pace that you allow it to? And is it the natural pace is this fast rushing thing and you feel like it's fast until you realize that you can actually control the pace of it.
Yeah.
And then you change it.
Yeah. I think, your audience can age in and age out at the pace, depending on the pace you're going. Right. But at the end of the day, when you have a full library of books there, of something, to do, to read and to consume, a new person exposed to it is just going to they're not going to buy one book. They're going to buy all the books. Right. So it's I think he's wise in that he's created a perennial sort of seller, because there's always going to be people aging into that level of graphic
and they
novel.
Have so much content. It's so awesome. It makes me so jealous that I just don't have the staying power with one project, because I'm just bouncing all over the place.
Right.
To give people that 9-volume.
Right. And there's just so much more I wanted to go. We got to have him on again. There's other stuff.
Sure.
We didn't get into Daisy Cutter. We didn't get into. You don't know the story about his grandfather and what he did. For World War II, I believe what it was. Fascinating stuff. Anyways, yeah. Okay, I'll take us out. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. 3-Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn.com, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts are Will Terry, Lee White, and I'm Jake Parker. Will Terry couldn't join us today. He is on assignment. However, you can find his work at willterry.com and at Instagram at willterryart. Lee White is at leewhiteillustration.com and on Instagram at leewhiteillo. And I'm over at mrjakeparker.com. And you can find me at Instagram at Jake Parker. Podcast produced by Daniel Tu. That's danieltu.co to go to his website. Special thanks to Master of Production, David Bro, Keeper of the Curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, Chief Operations Officer, Lisa Fott, and a thank you to Lily Howell for our show notes. Now, go draw something.